So here we are. Welcome, Emma, and thank you so much for saying yes to join me amongst your hectic schedule and crazy Make an Impact life for this week's episode of Coffee with Kofi, which comes with not just a coffee, but also a cookie. So I've got you covered in case you haven't got one.
Fantastic. That is a recipe for greatness right there.
It is the caffeine and then the sugar, even though I'm supposed to have given up sugar for Lent, but don't tell Jesus and we're all good.
Your secret's safe with me, buddy.
That's it. So before we get into like your amazing career journey, I thought we could start off with a bit of an icebreaker. How's that sound?
Icebreaker sounds great because I hate that first question. Tell me about yourself, which is ironic, and I'll tell you why later. Go ahead. Let's do it.
Now is the awkward moment because my icebreaker was going to be, can you tell us who you are? But no, let's go for another icebreaker then.
So that's like a bad one night stand. You know that, Kofi? Like no amount of coffee and cookie is going to make up for that icebreaker.
No, it's not even. It could have been, but it isn't. So my icebreaker is: you go to a restaurant. Is Emma ordering a starter and a main course, or a main course and dessert, or all three?
That is a really good question. I probably wouldn't be able to fit all three in if history tells us anything. And I used to be an avid starter and main kind of gal. I was massively into savory everything and pretty anti-chocolate or anything sweet. But in my old age, and this could be perimenopause kicking in, it could be the fact that I have so few pleasures in my life that chocolate is it because I work my ass off. Don't know what it is, but I am a dessert girl through and through. So main and dessert, absolutely a winning combination. Anything with like baked fruit speaks to me. Fruit and chocolate, like that raspberry and chocolate combination. I mean, I'm all yours. Let's get hitched.
All right, let's do this. So if you were to choose a dessert at the end of a meal, just to build on this icebreaker situation, what would it be?
Oh, I mean, my dad's flourless chocolate cake. I cannot tell you. And it doesn't sound like it could be a cake without flour. What's a cake without flour? I don't know. Or I didn't know until I tasted my dad's flourless chocolate cake. It's a incredibly rich chocolate cake that you just have a tiny slither.
Yeah.
And you pair it with like a really good quality vanilla ice cream because my dad wouldn't do crappy vanilla ice cream. It's only the best. He's a really good cook, my dad, and baker. And then he would probably serve it with fresh raspberries and a berry coulis. And it is just, I mean, you could have it for a starter and a main and a dessert. That's how good his cake is. His flourless chocolate cake is. It's a real treat.
Oh, wow. And you know, they say that comparison is a thief of all joy, and I do live by that, but I'm looking at my cookie right now thinking it's not the one.
Well, I mean, if ever you go to Australia, you let me know and I'll give you my dad's address and pop in for a coffee because he's a great conversationalist. He'll feed you. He's a great cook. And you're probably a place to crash if you need it too. It's just kind of how we roll in my family.
I'm accepting all donations of travel destinations, and it sounds like it's worth the flight. And that you've segued into a bit about you, because for those that are listening who are like, that accent, I detect definite South London vibes, maybe Mancunian vibes, I'm not sure. Where did you grow up? And then we could start to flow into the conversation as we're doing so nicely so far.
Good question. Well, it's after 12 o'clock, so I can answer this honestly. I was bred in Melbourne. Ugh, shudder at the thought. For those listening, don't ever think about your parents having sex because it's gross. It doesn't matter how old you get, it's still gross. And I was born in Sydney but raised in Melbourne. So my mum decided that she wanted a first child, and she managed to seduce my father over the fence. They were neighbours. And he didn't want a kid. She did. She got pregnant and said, I'm having her. And then introduced me, and he decided he wanted to be a dad, I think. And that's how it all went. But yeah, so I was born in Sydney, raised in Melbourne, spent the first 22 years of my life in Australia. And then came over to London 14 years ago, which must make me 27. So I must be 23 when maths has never been the strength of mine. I prefer words.
That is everything. It would not be right.
Yeah, I mean, if you say it with chess, people don't even fact check you. I've found that's how I got my business started. Another story for later. But and I came over here because I desperately needed a sea change. I'd been with a man who was my dear friend who I adored and loved, blah, 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 but was a bit of a stoner. So the Xbox got more action than I did in our relationship. I thought this is no way to live. And managed to sell my half of our house to him. And trekked across like from Melbourne to Perth in search of a sea change. Landed in sleepy Perth. Very accidentally got a job in recruitment for Drake International. They're a big global recruitment company. Ended up managing one of their divisions, the Medox division in Perth. So it was recruiting and placing a whole load of temp GPs and dental assistants and support workers and blah, blah, blah. Managed to pull back a couple of failing contracts. Don't know how, because I knew nothing about anything back then. Like I say, everything with your chest, right?
With your chest.
Learning on the job. Hated every second of it, except the wins. You know, the fact that I could pull back some contracts and make some stuff work and improve things, build things. And then Perth was like really sleepy. Have you ever been to Perth?
I haven't been that far. I've got as far as Asia, but I haven't got over to Australia, which is a criminal, I know. But
I mean, if you were criminal many years back, you'd have got a free trip to Australia. They'd pop you on the boat, and send you over. Yep. Just not the right time, I guess. Maybe in future. I hope not. So sort of buggered around in Perth for 8 or 10 months or so, and I'd managed to convince my best mate Bianca to give away all of her worldly possessions, sack off her cushy job, give the company car back. Like, we both had good jobs and all that, you know, careers, and we were in leadership, and we packed up her little shit heap of a car. It was I think it was a Toyota Corolla, one of those tiny little ones that had not many years left, I think, probably on the clock. The writing was on the wall. Anyway, drove up the guts of Australia and discovered like how expansive and vast and beautiful our nation is, and how little I knew about really home. And then landed in Perth, ended up coming to London and getting a real job after about 6 months of pissing about and drinking all my savings and, you know, all that stuff that young people do that old people tend to regret. And now I've got 2 businesses. I've got a cat, British, not Australian. He's a little terrorist. I created a beast. I found him when he was 6 weeks old, and he adopted me, and then I created the beast he is now. And started my 2 businesses and have no way of getting out anymore. So I guess London's home.
I love this. This is what I would call an espresso shot of Emma, where you've hit us with the key journey, the inception, Genesis, and we've not got to the end yet. So thank you so much for sharing that. And do you have other siblings? So are you in the sibling constellation, or is it one and done? They did it right first time and then that's it?
I have a younger brother, but my mum tells me my mum tells me that I'm her favorite daughter, but I'm her only daughter. So I maintain that I'm her favorite child, and she just got confused.
It happens in older age, apparently.
It does. I think she's actually. I'm worrying about her a little bit because she forgets my name sometimes. Yeah, she's a good woman though. She actually co-founded the charity with me.
Okay. Oh, brilliant. Yeah. So there's 2 of you, and you are your mom's favorite child. Though she wants to assign gender to that, we're going to go with it.
So we had about 10 years to realize that I was her only daughter, and therefore could only be her favorite daughter, and it wasn't really that complimentary at all. 10 years, Kofi. I don't know what that says about me.
There's a bit to unpack here, and I think we might have to do a part 2 and 3.
I'll come back next year.
So tell us, because you've started. I know you as Emma, founder and CEO of 2 incredible businesses, Be Radical and Radical Recruit. Not necessarily started at the same time, but for those that don't know, who haven't seen, who've yet to connect with you, which I really hope they do, like, can you just give us a breakdown of what both businesses do, and then I'll ask a bit more about what made you start them But you can go in any order. What made you start them? But I think context would be really helpful as to what it is that you spend your time doing these days.
Yeah. So, I mean, I run two businesses, like you said. One is a charity. It was founded over 5 years ago now, a couple of weeks before the pandemic basically shut down recruitment across the globe, and certainly in London, as if the sort of the task of specking in a reformed bad boy who's just been released from prison, or a homeless person who'd been picked up on the Everybody In campaign during the street sweeps that happened in the name of public health and safety during the pandemic, as if those sort of task jobs weren't hard enough. There were no opportunities to fill, or very few, dwindling, let's say that. And Radical Recruit was founded because I'd worked in the third sector, the charity sector, since, from the moment I started working. I followed my mum's footsteps, rather sadly, into a career in supporting disabled people, and from there sort of built out my portfolio. And, 17 years in, and I'd realized that, my work, especially relating to employability provision, whether that was jobs brokerage services, return or ready for work programs, recruitment services, they were diluted down versions of what the underdogs of society needed by way of recruitment and employability support. So Radical was born out of a need to provide that service to, millions of people in the UK. We work with two constituencies: those who have protected characteristics under the law, but very often can't get into the marketplace, into the workplace, and secure work that would enable them to enjoy those protections. What good are they? You can't get the job. And then also people who have had usually adverse life experiences that make it really challenging to secure a job in the first instance, or keep them in underemployment because they've been sort of they're viewed through a lens of mistrust, or assumed to not be skilled enough to elevate, these sorts of things, as well as, people have had careers and then were absent for whatever reason. So, they might have gone through a bout of homelessness, or been in a domestic violence situation, or perhaps they've been in prison and not been able to work.
Yeah.
So the model is we try and teach people how to fish. So we reduce their reliance on us. And what we do is provide them with all of the skills and the tools they need to confidently navigate through competitive recruitment processes against candidates from the mainstream.
Got you.
So what happens in the charity sector, or at least this is in my experience, it's littered with organizations who desperately want to do this work and do it well. But sadly, they don't understand the mechanics of recruitment because they're not recruiters or talent acquisition specialists, and generally staffed by wonderful humans who haven't worked in corporate, don't understand the pace at which corporates need them to work in order for them to be great talent partners, all of this sort of stuff. And so what the sector does with its partners is throws mud at walls and hopes some of it sticks. They don't qualify their candidates. They don't vet their experience or qualifications. They don't talk about what great work would look like. They don't understand their recruitment preferences. They don't understand the organizations, the roles would go into, these sorts of things. And it just sets everyone up to fail. But conversely, the only way out of poverty is through employment. You can't live a dignified life without employment, can you?
No.
Feed your kids, you can't pay your bills, you're not valued in the same way as a tax-paying citizen would be, And so, this model aims to help people move and help them identify why they're worthy of work, why they're worthy of being valued in that way. Help them to sort of understand what they're good at, what they're interested in, what skills they've got that transfer, what employers need that they have, and matching them with roles that will offer meaningful work in exchange for competitive sort of salaries and opportunities to progress. Brilliant. Very often the people we support are just ring-fenced into crappy roles that most British people don't want, like seasonal fruit picking or, packing shelves at Tesco. But the reality is not everyone, that's not good work for everyone. It's good work for some people, but not everyone. So we try and sort of plug that gap. And then the other business does all the work with employers who say they want to recruit radical talent, so people from those two constituencies, but who haven't done the work to really empathize with the barriers that these people face, and the barriers are the reasons why they're not applying for the jobs or seeing their vacancies in the first place, why they're not performing well in their recruitment processes, why they're not onboarding, staying in the organization, this sort of thing.
Oh, yeah.
So that's an unapologetically commercial entity. It funds the work of charity in part. It's staffed by the same leadership team. They're the founders, and it helps organizations look at the current lay of the land and like plan pathways to where they want to be. And that could include like helping them to get a grip on their data, you know, who's diverse and who's not in their organization. It could be like carving out a strategy and an actionable plan with a maturity model. It could be developing bespoke experiential learning for their recruitment team who needs debiasing. It could be reviewing policies through an equity and accessible lens, these types of things that enable recruitment at the coalface to happen, that sort of and result in radical people applying for their vacancies and being taken seriously and accommodated. So that's what we do. It was a long answer, wasn't it?
It's long, but it's also necessary because it's what brought me to get to know you, and I think it's a fantastic thing because sometimes the will isn't there. We put that to one side. There's nothing you could do about that. But sometimes the will is there, but the know-how isn't there. And I think by having the two businesses, what I'm hearing from you is that you help empower organizations that want to do the right things and the socially equitable things, and support those that really want meaningful work to build meaningful connections and provide, and not be a burden or a drain on the state, etc. But they just don't know how. Like, they've got no experience. So you do that commercially, brilliantly, amazingly. And then on the other side, it's like, okay, so you're set now. You want to do this, or you already set before you met us. You now want access to that talent.
Yeah.
We are here operating with the mindset of commercially aware and astute individuals who've come from the backgrounds you've come from, to deliver that for you at pace, and to be able to demonstrate the return on investment that they're going to make. So I got it. It makes sense.
I mean, you pitch us much better, and you actually that elevator pitch, I might steal that back. I think we've made over 750 placements now.
Wow.
We've got a above 92% in work sustainability rate at the 6-month mark. And we're working with people who are furthest from the labour market. So they've got intersectional disadvantage. And what we've found is that if you do the work to ensure your infrastructure, your people, your culture are fit for purpose, they're welcoming of radical talent and capable of sort of accommodating or anticipating their needs even better. You know, your pipeline opens up significantly, and it's life transforming work as well. You know, we did a project with the Greater London Authority, so this was the one that sort of got us on the map. St Mungo's, a chap from St Mungo's called me. I think he was Phil, and this is like when I just started. I think I was in my paddling pool, you know, that really hot lockdown summer.
Yes.
So I was in my paddling pool writing a funding bid. So I had no money at all. Writing a funding bid, pitching this model as a pilot that someone could invest in, basically. And a cider. We just finished a round of cards, a little break. In the paddling pool, typing away. And this chap called Phil, I think his name was Phil, called me from St Mungo's and said, "I've heard about you. Apparently you're doing great things. We need a recruitment partner. We've got all this money from the GLA, Greater London Authority. You know, the remit is to place people, men and women, who have been picked up off the streets in the Everybody In campaign, that day and night street sweep. Basically solves rough sleeping overnight for, you know, 90% of the population, I believe.
Yeah, it's surprising, isn't it, when you think it's been ongoing issue for however many donkeys of years. But when
and it's still an issue. The men and women were put into university dorms that were not occupied during the pandemic for all the obvious reasons. Anyway, and I, like, my response was, "What the fuck do you think I can do for you?" Like, I leveled with him. I was like, to be totally transparent, I'd have a dig at it, maybe. But I don't have a team. I don't have a little black book of contacts. I've got absolutely no track record. I think I probably made 20 odd placements by then, you know, and I was giving away the services, begging people to let me, you know, work on these vacancies, just so I could prove the model. And he was like, put your hat in the ring anyway. And so I got off the call. I said to him, look, it's not for me. I can't deliver on this. You've got to be, there's better partners, surely. And then I had a chat with my friend, my bearded brother, Glenn Martin. And he was saying, just do it. Well, I mean, what's the worst that can happen? You can lose the opportunity. That's it. But, you know, nothing ventured, nothing gained. I said, if I do this and I get this thing, you need to come on board and help me deliver it then. That's the... And he said yes. And I did. So in a matter of about 3 weeks, I had 3 weeks to sort of mobilize, get moving. And I recruited a team of three amazing humans, one marketing, one recruiter, one sort of business admin type person. And we got to work. So we got 65 referrals in the end, and we placed 45 of them into work. 2 years later, 78% were still in work. And so we were working with Mighty, Compass Group, you know, household names.
I was going to say, pretty small fry. Like, I've never heard of any of those, but they seem to be some constituents. If they were FTSE 100 in sort of levels.
Yeah, and really big, you know, global companies with brands, brands that people know. And that was sort of how I got started, because I was able to tell a whole load of stories about, you know, the assets and the potential and the amazing qualities that our radicals have that just no one knows about because we're so busy consuming the popular narrative, you know. And yeah, off the back of that, I had Warner Media approach me, and I had Sage approach me, and various other really well-known household brands. And we started sort of developing and iterating this model and sort of tailoring it to the needs of our clients. And today we're sort of a fully fledged charity, and we've got a growing list of global employers who approach us rather than the other way around, because they read our stories on LinkedIn or hear a podcast and think, oh yeah, I want to be a part of that. Why wouldn't you? Yeah, really life change. The point being, you know, you get, when you accommodate people in your sort of, whether it's your engagement strategy or marketing strategy, you accommodate different neurotypes, different backgrounds, different identities, whatever, explicitly, or you say, I want more of people like you, they come, you know, they come. Yeah. And then if you can accommodate them through your processes, all of them, you know, onboarding all the way to support and development, recruitment, of course, you get a much bigger pool of talent to pick from, choose from, but also a far more diverse team. It's very cool. Yeah. As well as the warm and fuzzies, knowing that you've transformed a life. And I think, you know, for those businesses who are concerned with this, we can measure the impact. You know, if you place a prison leaver into work and that person's on a 30K salary, and they're paying their taxes, and they're not on the streets, and they're not committing crime, and they're not going through a justice process or whatever, you know, you're saving the taxpayer a shit ton of money. A prison place is 60K, you know, to keep someone on the streets, which is often where they start before they go to prison. It's 21K on average a year. 60K for a prison place. They're not paying taxes. That's another, 12K on a third. I don't know. I'm terrible at maths, but this sort of thing. Yeah. But very old, you know, adds up really quickly. The money saved the public purse, money put back into the public purse, community cohesion, safety, resilience, all of that stuff improves.
I'm so.
Do this work. Yeah. And it's a talent solution, and it's a diversity, you know, opportunity to tick some of these diversity boxes, but actually do the work well. You know, it's a win-win. It makes every bit of sense on a human, commercial, societal level.
Yeah, it really does. And you know, the more I live day by day, the more I realize, one, I don't know anything, and the more I also see the interconnectivity between things. You know, and you know, I'm with you on this love and belief in inclusive workspaces that are full and rich of diverse talent across diverse, neurodiversity, gender, sexual orientation, religious beliefs, whatever. Because I think when you make the culture inclusive, where people feel like, hey, like I can bring my own version of authentic wackiness that I have here, is okay. you can do the same too, and we could just kick beep and do meaningful work that we all enjoy and go home and look after. Like, it is a no-brainer situation in my mind, and I see the interconnectivity there, that when you have companies who come to you and say, we want to do this, we want to do the work, it's not just about let's tick this, tick this, tick this. Actually, what they're saying is we're an employer that values this, and then people want to go there, which gives them, like you said, the talent pool to choose from. Others won't get, because you look on their website and everyone looks the same.
Everyone's name John.
Yeah, do you know what? They never talk about anything like that, and you question, like, do I want to go somewhere where I'm going to have to change who I am to fit in with those folks, or do these people welcome me and all my marvelous madness?
Yeah.
And the rest is history. So thank you for that, because it really brings home the story. However, when you say it like you say it, there has been a journey that you've gone on, and we talked about this earlier. Save a life, one end of the spectrum, make an impact the other end of the spectrum. What you've chosen to do for me is not chill and watch Netflix. No. So at what point did you think to yourself, I'm going to go down this route of seeing what I can do with this, because I've got an idea and I just want to see if I can make it manifest into something more marvelous? Like, what was the turning point for you, or maybe the journey to turning?
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of the underdogs. Like, there's nothing more satisfying than helping someone who is at their lowest point in life take a step up, and watching them do it in a purposeful, empowered way. Yeah. Like, knowing that the outcome of your support means that they can take not just one step, but multiple steps into their future, walking with purpose. That is beautiful, and it's a real privilege. I've been acutely aware of my privilege. I mean, Mum would tell you that we had a conversation in a tent about why it's important to include Rowan, the disabled kid who's a pain in the ass, but used to come on every holiday. This sort of penny drop moment, like, oh, I get it now. If we don't invite him, no one will. He doesn't get a holiday, that sort of thing. So I've always grown up with very strong values from both my parents, but predominantly my mum, I think, around being decent, I think, and considering other people and using the resources and assets and the things you've got at your disposal for the benefit of more than just you. You know, there's a whole big world of people out there with lots of different experiences who aren't necessarily as well-to-do as you. And privilege is fluid, don't get me wrong, and I've been a hell of a lot of more privileged some days or some years than others, so I get that. But, you know, using what you've got to build communities or, you know, help people who need it, you know. So that's always been sort of something that I've done as second nature. I'm too honest to be employed in corporate, so that career pathway was out.
I love it.
And I you know, like I said, became acutely aware of the fact that literally the only way out of homelessness, out of poverty, out of, you know, if you're a woman with children in a domestic violence situation, the only way out of that situation is financial autonomy. Often it's not even within reach, because, you know, they're still in these relationships, in these awful violent situations. So really wanted to find a way to agitate those cycles, you know, that care to prison pipeline, that homelessness to prison pipeline, you know, all those things that I was seeing over and over and over again that the third sector was not doing much about, because we just didn't have the capacity. We still don't, I don't think, broadly speaking, we still don't understand recruitment. We're still not taken seriously by corporates. And then I met a woman called Shan, who was one of the first women I supported in my previous role before founding Radical. So I worked an organizer, a grassroots women's charity called Working Chance, and they support women coming out of prison and those who have been in care, aging out of the system to get jobs. And, you know, they fit the profile of charity I described earlier. Very well-intentioned humans, me included. Lots of partnerships with, you know, big brands like the KPMGs of the world who want to throw money at causes but not actually do a great deal of work, or at least they didn't back then. I don't know what they're doing now. Disclaimer. You know, and so they were brokering opportunities built on relationships that were charitable. So never a talent solution, never viewed as anything more than a good thing to do. And of course, the work that needed to be done to do this work well just wasn't happening. You know, the clients weren't thinking about how they were going to receive the talent they recruited and support them, develop them, and we weren't vetting them properly or understanding even the requirements of the role. You know, basic things like that weren't happening. But also, you know, you put a woman into a decent paying job and all of a sudden she can feed her kids, and then her kids don't grow up in poverty and have kids in poverty and so on and so forth. So huge potential, really.
You really break that cycle, yeah.
Yeah. And Shan was one of these kids that grew up in poverty and had the odds stacked up against her from day one. You know, probably shouldn't have been alive on paper. So she was one of 16 siblings, black family, born into, so her kid, not her kids, she doesn't have any kids. What am I trying to say? Her parents, that's right. Sorry, I've got word salad, mate, all the time. Bloody irritating. So her parents belonged to opposing gangs, and they were children when they had her. So they were 13 and 14, respectively, when she was born.
Crazy.
So you can appreciate the type of upbringing and opportunity she would have had. I mean, none, really. Her mum was a drinker and a drugger, I believe, and her father was a prolific criminal. And by the time she was 12, she'd already had an arms conviction and been in juvenile sort of youth, young offenders institution. By the time she was 26, she'd done 10 years, cumulatively 47 convictions. The last one was arson and threats to kill. Big, serious convictions, you know.
Yeah.
And when I first started in my role at Working Chance, I applied to volunteer because I was in between jobs, didn't know what I wanted to do, and heard really good things about them. And then I met with the founder who liked me and created a COO role for me, and I was in, you know. Oh no, it wasn't a COO role, it was a head of something role, and then it turned into a COO role, whatever. I was doing the same day one, optimizing their service.
Performance.
Oh, there you go. You've done your research, haven't you? Anyway, so yeah, and one of my jobs was to call Shan. She was in HMP Downview. She'd been there for 6 odd years or something ridiculous. Like 3 years. It was a 6-year sentence. I can't remember, something like that. Long time. And I had to cobble together what I now know to be a diluted, crappy version of a good CV, using her work experience, which was pretty much non-existent, except for the catering service that she managed to convince the governor of the merits of her sort of getting up and running. So she run this, and the governor, you don't do anything. Have you been to a prison?
No, I haven't.
Not yet.
Yeah. So Working Chance used to do work with one of the companies I used to work for. So some of the women from that used to volunteer and I think sort of do was coaching or CV reviews for people. So that may have been back then. Yeah, but no, I've never been to a prison.
Okay. Well, they're horrible, awful, sad places full of people who have learning disabilities and other disabilities and neurodivergent conditions, who have just been like, they've just come from poverty as a general rule. And then there's a whole load of like white collar criminals and all that sort of stuff. But predominantly, I would say most of the prison population are people who've had, you know, falling into hard times, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, she convinced him of the merits of founding Down the Cake Hole, a catering service that did a whole load of stuff in the prison and outside of it. So she was catering events for the charity I worked for and other charities, as well as the governor. And I spoke to her about like why that was her only work experience. But what was her motivation? And she explained that she looked around the prison every morning. She'd walk around the prison and see women with absolutely no opportunities on release. They had no skills. They were like her. They hadn't had any opportunities. And she wanted to create opportunities for those women to learn skills that they could go and use on release. Anyway, she was about 6 or 8 weeks away from release herself. And she was going to be released into a supported accommodation service for mappers and in Reading. And I desperately wanted to get her a job because I thought, what a great reason to do this work in prison. Like, that speaks volumes, right? Yeah. And I said, I'm going to get you some employers to talk to. They've got vacancies for you to apply for. You need a job on release. So cobbled together this shitty CV. I called the we called the head of people at Honest Burgers, a chap called Ollie at the time, and he convinced him to come down to the prison, meet Shan. She served him a piece of her carrot cake. He tasted the carrot cake. So it was the best piece of fucking carrot cake he'd ever eaten. And asked what were her prospects on, on release. And she had none. But he happened to be opening a new restaurant in Reading. What are the chances? Where she was going to be, where she was going to be released to. So she came in a prison gear on the day of her release, interviewed, got the job. And about 18 months later, we're talking at this conference, Shan, Ollie and I talking through Shan's story on a panel. That was what was it called? It was exploring what happens when the third sector and the private sector or business community unite in common purpose. And she was talking about the fact that she used to go to prison for a respite from her life, and that she had elevated from the dish pig to sous chef in training, that she had a community she felt like she belonged to, that she had prospects for a future. She was hopeful. She didn't feel unsafe. She managed to avoid going back to her old life. She cut all ties with the family that was dangerous and harmful to her. And she was speaking so courageously in front of a packed audience. There's about 100 suits, professionals that look like they've come
used to.
She was in like sliders and socks, knowing Shan, in a tracksuit probably, because that's all she had. And she was advocating for other people like her, and so articulately. I mean, she had people on the edge of her seats wanting to help. And I'd realized that that was the first time I'd ever pitched a room of suits and actually elicited that reaction. There was a change, something changed, and it was just hearing her story and in its real uncensored form, unapologetically real, uncleansed. And people, like stood up, or they heard for the first time what this work could do for society, for people like Shan, for their businesses. And that was the moment where I thought, no one should have to go to prison to feel safe.
No.
No one should feel unloved, unworthy. No one should be hungry at night or have to sleep, in unsafe places or prostitute themselves out to eat. Like, it's just the stuff nightmares are made of. And there weren't any recruitment companies supporting people, representing Shan or people like Shan. Like, there were 35,000 recruitment agencies registered as trading. None of them would touch Shan with a 10-foot pole.
No.
You don't even have to have 47 convictions to really need support. You have to have one. Like, the real punishment starts when you leave the prison gates and there's no one there to support you, and you've got this fuck off size, tattoo in invisible ink that says I'm untrustworthy, I'm unmotivated, I'm dangerous. That lens, that deficits lens, that danger lens that we see people like Shan through, just because we don't know any better, because we consume we believe everything we consume in terms of popular narrative, blah blah blah. So that was my like, another long story. Sorry about that. That was my eureka moment. That was like, I have to do, because the prison service, for example, you've got 90,000 cells, more than that probably now, because they're building new prisons, occupied by men every year. And there's this churn. People go in and out of the prison, and just spat back into the circumstances that led them there, but with more trauma and more stuff to deal with, more challenges and barriers and blockers. You've got, like, what is it, 14 million people with a disability? My business partner and co-founder, Kirsty, she's blind. Something like, I think it's less than 30% of people with her sight condition are employed. And it's like, she is the most amazing colleague. She works like a dog. She's also a solo mum to two painful challenges and all that. Like, she works her ass off. And I'm just thinking, people like her miss out because Radical doesn't exist for them, or another supporting organisation exists for them. So that's what I set out to do. That was sort of like the moment I was like, I need to do this for men. I need, from leaving prison, disabled people, homeless folk, young people, born with the wrong color skin or the wrong accent or whatever it is that prevents them from being viewed as viable, great talent, or prevents them from seeing the opportunities in the first place.
Yeah. So many rich nuggets of what I call like the why. I mean, I didn't come up with it. I think Simon Sinek said it, but if you go back, Viktor Frankl said it, other people have said it. But when you know your why, like everything else becomes bearable, like whatever you've got to run through to do it. And, even I wasn't there when Shan spoke, but authenticity is one of like the highest vibrations you can have. And when you speak from the heart, vulnerable or otherwise, your tribe feels it and they hear it. And I think
absolutely.
At our core, you talked about your family and your upbringing with your mum, and I hear it as she really made you a child of the world, not a child of hers, but a child of the world, in terms of the empathetic lens that she kind of instilled in you. Having your disabled buddy, not one buddy, come with you, made you sort of have to look at yourself and realize that privilege that you sat in like a fish in water. Do you know what I mean? And I think when you look at us as human beings, right? I didn't grow up where you grew up. You didn't grow up where we are not even the same gender, but there are certain values that we have, sometimes at the surface, sometimes buried deep down. And when someone speaks their truth, like Shan spoke her truth, it resonated with you, made you act. People in the room want to act, and we connect on a maybe too woo. I think it's a spiritual level. All this doesn't matter. Like there is a person, a soul here who is desperate to be loved, to belong, to build something meaningful for their life, and just hasn't played a part in that. And I think
it's really shitty. These aren't sort of inalienable human rights, and I think these are privileges that most folks who have them take for granted,
Oh yeah, 100%.
It's funny. It's not funny at all, actually, but Shelter recently published a report that confirmed that most people are one paycheck away from not being able to pay rent. And you know what that leads to? Homelessness.
Yeah.
And the lack of empathy for homeless people, even with that data being so readily available and widely publicized, we're still not empathizing with why people like Shan end up on the streets, and the fact that it's actually not a choice. I mean, our government doesn't, neither of the recent governments, current or previous, have done a great deal to sort of encourage people to think any other way than, homelessness is a choice, and, prisons are places where you get to relax and chill out and play pool or whatever. I mean, none of this is true, of course. But I think that, as a society, if people were a little bit more single-minded about practicing curiosity in order to empathize with other people, their experiences, their identities, not just the hard stuff either, the stuff that makes us great and brilliant, we would have a much kinder, much fairer society to enjoy with each other, as in a more united, loving way, which sounds really great, but I genuinely believe that. Like, we've all got things that we can give, if that makes sense. We've got things that we can use for the benefit of other people. I think there's, people who choose to do it, people who like consciously look for opportunities to make the world a better place or brighten someone's day. Like, there's a spectrum, isn't there?
Yeah.
You're on the streets and someone looks at you and says, "Hey mate, how you going? Can I buy you a coffee?" I mean, that's a kindness, one individual act that's going to solve the problem. But that makes a huge difference for someone like Shan, who is just invisible otherwise. She's on the streets. And then there's sort of the other end of the spectrum where you've got employers with, collectively, they are the most powerful entity to elicit any change in the way the world works, really. Certainly from a social justice perspective, if every organization decided to recruit a Shan once a year, homelessness would be solved. Most people want to.
Easy. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, not everyone can work, but the thing is that those who can't work would benefit from so much more resource, because we're not spending money keeping people in poverty, and they're contributing to the the public purse. They're paying back into the public purse. So the resources we've got available not only grow, but aren't wasted on people who don't need support. If they just had intensive help, like we gave Shan, you know. I worked with a chap who, his name's Malcolm. I write about him often. You know, there's this mentality around like, just get a job. You know, if you, and like we live in a meritocracy, and if you just work hard enough, you will succeed. What a load of shit. And so you get people like, so one of my first radicals I ever placed, a chap called Malcolm. Black man, he'd been street homeless for 10 years, in and out of Brixton prison for squatting and sleeping indoors, you know, all that sort of stuff, because it's illegal to sleep on the streets. People don't know that.
No, I didn't.
And the reason he ended up on the streets was because his father passed away unexpectedly, and it tore the family apart. They just weren't functional anymore, and they lost the house. And he had serious mental health challenges and was suicidal for many years, and attempted to die by suicide on a number of occasions, and lost contact with his family because he's so ashamed of his addiction and his mental illness, and a black family, so they didn't really get it, and there wasn't a lot of blah blah blah. Anyway, I met him. He was living in sort of transitional accommodation, like a hostel type thing, and I worked with him intensively for about 6 hours across 2 days. So I did everything from a CV review to talking about his barriers and his blockers, and helping him sort of navigate through the real ones and the perceived ones and all that sort of stuff, and an interview. And he got the job. He showed me this portfolio of work. He was an artist, a really creative guy. He was teaching himself how to code and do all sorts of things after we placed him. And that job solved his homelessness, by the way. He was able to move into permanent, accommodation on the private market. Anyway, he showed me this portfolio of work, and there was this one illustration where it was him on the street, sitting on the street, and all of these blue or red dots, I can't remember which, blue dots, and he was red, or vice versa, walking, all around him. I said, what is this? And he explained it. He's like, oh, that's me. And they're all the people who walk past me and don't see me. Like, that is why, if you look at that spectrum of what we can do as a society, on the individual level, it's someone stopping and saying, hey, mate, what's your name? Can I buy you a cuppa? I'm Emma. And at the other end, it's a brand like Honest Burgers, or, any of the mobs that we work with that are going to look beyond the labels, do the work to make it possible for people like Malcolm to come in off the streets and stay work, and so much goes on in between those two sort of events. And that's what we do, and that's what our amazing volunteers do, and that's what anyone listening to this sort of podcast can do, is get involved with local charity and give some time, support financially, do some pro bono work, talk about it. These are the things that everyone can do something.
You can, and I don't worry about the length, because I'm learning and I'm enjoying it, and I know that others will be inspired, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know. We talked about privilege, and it can oscillate and what have you. And I love this analogy of like a fish in water. The fish is chilling, doesn't know it's in water. Take it out of the water and it will know about it, right? And
it's a great analogy. Or metaphor. What is it? An analogy or metaphor? Oh,
metaphor. Well, let's call it a metaphorical analogy.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Excellent, lovely.
Because I haven't.
No clue. Okay.
But I think that if you look at it from the fact that it's so much closer than we allow ourselves to really think, and that many of us, myself included, like autopilot, get up, you go and do your thing, you come back, you're just focused on yourself, the individual, and it's all good. I don't want to look at this person, because like that could be whatever, it could be me, they could be dangerous, they could be. So I think this is so powerful for me, because unless there is an Emma who has been brought up with that thought process in all of us, we sometimes need someone to do the PR to make us aware of what the opportunities are to make a difference, and then remind us of our, it sounds grandiose, but like our humanity, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Privilege and our humanity, because like if it's one paycheck away from that, I bet you'd have the empathy if it happens to you. You will, because you're like, oh my God, but I had a house and I had this, and suddenly you're invisible. Like the mental, I just can't even imagine like the mental.
But it doesn't just happen to people who haven't been, like people like Shan, because there's this, like it, you can't, I think people with a certain level of privilege, and certainly this is true of me, even to this day, I feel in many respects untouchable. Like this is not going to impact me. And I can say that with confidence because I've got a great family who will bail me out. We'll find a way. And they don't have money either, my family. But if I needed to go home, Mum would pay for a ticket and she would house me until I got a job. Like that's the reality. Not everyone has sort of that support. But there are also, I sort of two examples that come to mind. We supported he must have been in his late 40s then, chap who had come out of prison 26 years prior. He very, white background, privileged upbringing in the sense that he wasn't born into poverty, didn't need to commit crime, but did. He got caught robbing somewhere. And he was sent, it was a jewelry shop, I think. And then he was sentenced to over 3 and a bit years, which is sort of the threshold for spent and unspent convictions. So if you serve a certain length of time in prison, your conviction won't be spent. If it's, under the 3.5 years, I think it is, it will be spent after a period of time. Anyway, so he came out of prison. He was like 25 at the time, 26 at the time. No, it must have been 25 at the time. So he must have been 50 or so when I met him. Anyway, been there, and he'd done 26 years with this same employer, the first job he got out of prison after looking for a role for a year. And it was with arguably the most risk-averse type of employer possible. It was a Golden Circle American law firm.
Okay.
Yeah. And he started as the accounts assistant. He worked his way up to billing and finance manager. I've redone his CV very recently. He was managing like 140 million in revenue and 170 partners, and he was a key contact for 25 European senior partners. It was a big job, and he moved up the ranks. Anyway, back then, people with convictions never worked in law. Like it wouldn't have even occurred to them that someone with a conviction of being to prison, no less, would apply to work for a brand like that. So they didn't ask about convictions. 25 years, 26 years later, HR, in their wisdom, brought in this retrospective DBS policy, which meant everyone in the organisation, including my candidate, my radical, got asked, do you have an unspent conviction? And of course, my radical answered, yes, honestly. That information went to the American partners. They got rid of him pretty much overnight. They just paid him to leave. And of course, he didn't have a leg to stand on because the SRA went, the regulator, the legal industry didn't come back to him quickly enough, blah, blah, blah. Ironically, they came back and said it's not a problem as long as you declare your conviction because he wasn't working. Anyway, it didn't matter. He could have stayed in that role. He had an unblemished record, and literally overnight, he went from living a very comfortable life to being out of work for like a year before I met him. Anyway, I bullied him into like starting up his own business. I thought, I'm never going to place you, not into legal services again, he was very senior. And so he ended up, and then he reluctantly set up this business, and then I introduced him to two of my clients, and I said, he's great, bring him on as a contractor and just give him a go. And they ended up, they did that, and he went on the books permanently for one, and he's still with the other client managing their billing and finance function, a law firm.
Amazing.
But like, someone like that on paper, very lucrative role in a really sexy business, paid well, all of that sort of stuff. Great, no track record, loved by everyone. Book of contacts and not 26 years, 25 years of knowledge and relationship building. And, it was his division. Gone overnight. They did not care. Because what if someone found out he had an unspent conviction? What would the paper, what would the news headlines read? So, like, that is the spectrum. You've got people who are like so far from the labour market. They're not like you get a chance in, a foot in the door. And you got people like this radical who have been in the labour market and all of a sudden just like, ejected out of it.
Yeah, just spat
With
out.
no way back, you know.
Yeah.
So he now employs one of our radicals in his side hustle. And he works with a book of sort of small and medium-sized enterprise that are doing stuff in the legal space and other.
That's
And he's earning more money than he did when he was working in his old gig. So that's good.
It is, and this is why I always, no, I don't always, that's a big lie. I've recently come to believe that rejection is often redirection in disguise, you know, and values are key to like every relationship, be it corporate or personal, like that. The firm he worked for 26 years, gave service to, did all the things, the values they have versus the values of the business he now runs and the ones that he participates in.
Absolutely.
If you ask most people, where would you want to be? I know what I would personally choose, and tough year he's had to go through, but to meet you and then to find his feet is amazing. Is amazing.
Yeah, well, I mean that was 5 years ago, so he's well and truly found his feet. He's still going. We've just updated his CV actually because he's found a role that he might want to apply for. But it's just, you know, I think people don't really understand what they're scared of.
No,
you know, they don't know what they fear. They know there's fear there. Often think that, you know, this work is this big like breathing beast that requires huge amounts of effort and investment and time and blah blah blah. But really, it's just like people not being a dick. That would be enough, you know.
Easy.
Or just
all the problems.
One kind thing for someone else, you know, like.
Emma, I don't know if you watched it before, but there used to be a program called Heroes. Do you remember that?
No, I'm Australian. Remember, when was this?
Yeah, it was. I think it was a US thing, and
I'm only 21 years old.
21, I think.
That was a lie, a big lie. Worth a try, wasn't it? I'm a terrible liar.
No, but this Heroes program, for those that have watched it, it was superheroes that all had different special powers. Some could block, some could do various things, and there was a central character who was a cheerleader who they had this tagline which was "Save the cheerleader, save the world." And I think just from the stories you've shared, I'm going to change your name in all my contacts to cheerleading for the world, because if we save Emma, we do save the world, insofar as just reminding us all about just being a decent human being, and to your point, not being a dick. Like if you just literally just do one thing, don't be a dick.
Yeah, and just do the smell test. If you can sniff whatever you're about to do and think, yeah, I wouldn't say that to my mother, or I wouldn't do that to my brother, or whatever, or wouldn't that happen to me, you can gauge pretty quickly whether or not it's you're being a dick.
100%, and that's the thing. Like, I think, you know, I'm going off piece with you, and I'm loving it because we're sort of flowing and dancing in the moment. And to hell with the questions I thought I was going to ask you, because this is way more interesting.
I commandeered your show. Sorry.
No, because this is what I've let it go because I'm learning so much, and I think it's like Sean's story. Like, it is the thing that makes people sit up and take notice. I often feel that if we saw each other like your parents raised you, your mum raised you to see others, as in, you're my sister. It doesn't matter what you look like, but you're my sister, or you're my cousin, or you're my auntie, or you're my mum, or what have you.
You're my brother from another mother, babe.
So?
I think there's actually a lag. I hope this doesn't wreck the recording, mate. There's a bit of a lag. Apologies.
That's okay. You said something about my mother, and
you're my brother from another mother.
Yes, I got you. No, that makes sense. So if we saw each other as that, see, I'm your brother from another mother, the way you would show up for me in the face of injustice or whatever, I think is a recipe for success for the world. I know it's oversimplified, but if we see everyone that is not our immediate family as our family, like whether it be women in the workplace with care and responsibilities that want to come back and not getting paid what they're supposed to be getting paid, that's your sister, that's your mother, that's your. I'm not going to sit tight. I'm not sitting tight. If I see a neurodiverse person getting a hard time from an accessibility perspective or getting a fair shake, and that's my brother, that's my sister, I'm not going to sit quietly, because you would show up assumptions being made, but for your family in a way that is different to an acquaintance that you can ignore on the street. So I feel you have cracked it. Like, we need to be brothers and sisters, try to be kind, not a dick, and
yeah. Yeah.
Preach.
Yeah, I think the world would be a much nicer place if that happened, that's for sure.
Definitely. And you know, say what?
I definitely enjoy it more.
I think so. I can't watch the news for like it just, but this is another Joe Springer. But you know, something I did want to get to with you was just really around the key lessons that you've learned along the journey of leadership, because some might listen to you and be like, oh my God, like you just say it so articulately. And of course there have been bumps in the road, but you say it with such passion and with your chest, as you say, and it's clear you care. It's clear that you're committed to this. But to help others that are thinking, oh God, like how do I be the kind of leader or the best kind of leader I can be? Like, are there any pearls of wisdom that you can share from your personal experience, which may just resonate with someone else, might not be for them, but just any pearls of wisdom around that leadership journey that you picked up?
Yeah, it's a good question. I wouldn't classify myself as a really good leader in terms of like leading humans in my employ. I think I don't know, and I'm not convinced I know the reason why. I mean, I always aim to empower and enable people to do their jobs. I think that's a good leader in a work context does that, and is you know, someone who's very happy to roll up their sleeves and get involved in anything that they ask their people to do, right? I think that's empowerment, enablement, you know, having a really what's the word, like spending the time to understand what's happening at the coalface. If you're sort of managing people like I do, who are working with folks in really challenging circumstances, or any work environment, I think in terms of leading like a movement that aims to like help society and the people within it think differently and do things differently, I'm good at that. And I think one of the most powerful tools a leader has in her possession is absolutely storytelling. It's also been incredibly vulnerable. It's been able to, or expecting that you'll make mistakes, big ones, and being ready to iterate, fail fast again, you know, fall hard, try again, you know, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I mean, they're for me the key things that makes a good leader. It has enabled me to do my role and bring, you know, people from thousands of people from disparate backgrounds onto Zoom calls to help people they've never met in, who are, you know, logging on in bloody libraries because they can't afford Wi-Fi at home. Like that's like the magic and the secret sauce, is when you can bring together people who are more clever than you, have things that you don't have, with a view to helping those who need your help in a really coordinated, effective, holistic, supportive, safe, person-centered way. Like that for me is what leadership looks like in my place of work and my communities.
And for me, that's exactly what I want, because I think from the first time I spoke to you through to now, like one of the things that's always struck me about you is you keep it real, as in you're real, authentically real, like not try to be corporate, not try to be this, not try. You are Emma, and this is Emma showing up 1 in 8 billion, doing the things that only you can do. And it's totally fine that, yeah, you might not say it's like perfection or whatever, but it's working for you and you're doing some great things. So I think there will be definite bits about empowering, elevating others, leading from the front that you talked about, being vulnerable, which some people will be like, oh God, I don't know about that. But like I said, authenticity lets your tribe find you, and they'll go to bat for you because they trust you, right? They trust that you're going to keep it real.
Absolutely. I mean, these are hardly original thoughts, are they? I think you talk to any leader, they're going to probably say the same things. But yeah, I think there's a huge amount of pressure on leaders to show up, you know, and be put together and have all the answers and know what the plan looks like and you know, win all the time. But if doing business were that easy, if managing teams were that easy, you wouldn't need leaders, would you? Manage yourselves, right? It's just not that simple. So I think,
You're right.
showing up and being real with people and trying your best and failing and doing it again and not giving up, that's leadership for me.
Yeah. But I think the way you might say it's not original, but I think the way you put it together in your own personal style with the common purpose and goal that people have got, for me, that stands apart. And I think it's brilliant. And I think I'm mindful that, and I knew this was going to happen. I said to you, like, we need to time check.
We got to wrap
just had a oh my God. I'm like, oh my God. I love it. So there's so many things I want to ask you. And I guess one of the things, maybe two other things, if you don't mind, is just in terms of the journey. You talked about failing fast. You talked about sort of just iterating as you go along. But for others out there that are thinking, okay, right, is there anything I can do that will help me? Like, what tools have you utilized to help you as a leader elevate yourself or move forward as a person that's passionate about what you do and willing to make mistakes and all the rest of that stuff? Are there any things that you've done particularly that other people can basically steal? That's what I'm asking, Emma.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, I cannot recommend mastering. I mean, I haven't mastered it, but using LinkedIn well. So when I started, I had no personal brand. I had barely any work history in the UK, absolutely no networks, didn't know anything about recruitment, didn't really know about any of the local challenges that homeless people face, expert displaced, whatever. And so, and no luxury of a budget even to pay myself initially. It was I had nothing that would make me successful except for a really cool idea.
Yeah.
Even now, some days I think, what the hell have I started? It wasn't that cool an idea. So these ebbs and flows, it's depending on my mood.
I love that.
But I have been able to, like, in my first 2 years, I think I recruited about 600 people like you, suckers like you, who bought into my value system and wanted to do something during the pandemic, and they would give their time and lend their skills and, I mean, move mountains for our radicals to help them into jobs. And that was all off the back of talking about my vision and telling the stories of impact and being vulnerable and sharing, when things got tough and asking for help and, all of those things I said that good leaders do. I wrote about that, really. And just to give you an example of what that looks like in practice. So you've got the, say, 600 volunteers, now 1,000 and something that are active on our books.
Fantastic.
You've got 750, it's more than that, but they're the ones we know about that have been placed with our employers, people into work. But we do other, LinkedIn has done other things like, I met a chap called Steve. He's in our marketing collateral. I tell his story pretty often, but he was Irish family. His mum was single Catholic. About 60 years ago, he's born, and he was taken from his mother's arms, literally, because she was unwed, into the care of the state. The care being a loose term. I use loosely. And so he grew up without a family, without mum, without care, without love, without everything that a child needs to be nourished. And then he went into youth offending institutions, then he went into prisons, and then he was homeless. So I met him 30 years. He'd been on the streets, sleeping rough in and out of prison. He had 140 something odd convictions. His rap sheet was huge. Like, you should see his DBS.
Gosh.
We had job opportunities for him in the pipeline because he was sleeping in his rusty old car in the middle of winter. We couldn't, in good faith, say to employers he was employable, or that he would retain work. And so I did a big fundraiser on LinkedIn over the space of about 12 hours. We raised a few grand to cover a deposit and a month's rent in his own flat on the open market, which was like, he'd never had a home before.
Yeah.
He got a job with what are they called? Forward Trust, one of their subsidiaries, a commercial arm, doing like grounds maintenance operative work. He ended up leaving that job for a bigger, better job. He ended up going to work in a street outreach role with another charity, supporting people just like him to come off the streets just like he did. And honestly, I told one story and I said, this is what I'll spend the money on. And I got an outpouring of support.
Mm.
Another chat, one of our volunteers found this young kid. I think he was Somali heritage. He'd come over to study by himself. He's only 18 and he was doing economics at a rep uni. I can't remember where, somewhere, I don't know where. Anyway, he posted on Reddit a plea for help, basically saying he'd lost his casual job during the pandemic. He had no family here. You know, he was here to study. He was alone. He was about to be kicked out of his rental premise, blah, 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 blah. And so that person on LinkedIn messaged me and said, I've just had this conversation on Reddit with this young person. Can you reach out to them? And I did. And we got him, I did a call out on LinkedIn, raised a few $1,000 to help him with a comm, replace his computer so he could go back to school, all this sort of stuff. And we got him a job in a brewery with Northern Monk in Leeds.
Yeah.
And that job meant that he could retain his accommodation. We paid off his debt. The people of LinkedIn paid off his debt. And you know, his life, I mean, he was saved from homelessness essentially, you know, and he's finished his degree and he's working and blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. And he still thanks me to this day. He'll call me once a year and just say, thank you. This is 5 years on. But what I'm saying is LinkedIn, if you have a mission that's purposeful, a brand that people believe in, you know, if you're adding value, if you're helping others, you know, all of that sort of stuff, anything that people appreciate, they're very happy to help you back out or help, you know, pay it forward if they can.
Yeah.
So LinkedIn is just, all my leads come from LinkedIn. It's all content marketing. I still don't have a big budget for marketing, but I think, you know, if you've got a purpose-driven mission, you've got great stories to tell, you're adding value, you're educating people, you're inspiring people, giving people hope, whatever it is that you're doing through your content marketing, you know, you will get the return you garner is just, I mean, I don't know how you measure it. It's extortionate. It's amazing.
I don't think you can. And I you know, just so much in there. Like for you, as I see you, like you aim to be all the things you just said, which I put under the bracket of a person of value to the world. And that isn't like, I want to make millions, but what you've done by being a person of value is to become that person who is also successful in what you do and in the lives that you've impacted, such that like it's just, yeah, I'm there's no doubt that there's probably some bad energy or whatever that's been coming your way, that some unknown prayers that you don't even know have shielded you from like that thing, if you ever remember that cartoon.
I don't remember that one either, I'm afraid. I wasn't much of a cartoon watcher. Sorry.
Yeah, I need to work this out. If I'm going to talk to leaders from all over the world, I need to get the cultural references down.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think most people just nod politely and not mention the fact that they don't know it. So you can account on that as a general rule. I'm not the kind to do that, sadly.
Yeah, the radical truth, radical business, radical life. I
can't help it.
No, and it's good because it's you and it's authentic. So my last question to you is thinking about like legacy and what you'd like that to be when all's said and done, really.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not no intention of, you know, I don't get out of bed to make millions or anything like that. Like you say, I think, what would I be happy with? I don't think about this stuff in these terms, to be honest. I think, you know, we're working to make ourselves redundant in both organizations. In an ideal world, the legacy would be we've solved something, homelessness, a range of different challenges, social challenges. The reality of the likelihood that will happen is probably pretty slim in my lifetime anyway, and they'll just be replaced with new issues, right? Let's be real. But I think that if I can leave this world or this business having empowered more people to walk with purpose into their futures and enable others to do the same thing. So I'm talking an all radical team, far more radical than I am. You know, a CEO has been to prison and in a CEO role. Or, you know, Alicia, for example, she's my one of my juniors. She's been with me for 5 years now. You know, she was homeless when I met her, and she was referred to me by Sage, one of our clients. And she had so much, I could see the potential. She was just this bright, resilient, kind, generous, comparing, lovely, empathetic, beautiful soul of a human. You know. And so she got a couple of job offers, and I was like, oh, God, I need her to be in my team. So I offered a job with no budget for it, and blah, blah, and we just made it work. But someone like her should be leading the charity. I'm not really that radical. I lost my mind a few years ago because of burnout. I literally could not. I was like speaking to a stroke victim. I couldn't speak, couldn't do anything really. I was useless to everyone. Aside from that mental health wobble and, you know, depression and things like this, I don't struggle. Like I'm not radical. I've had everything I've ever wanted for, really.
Yeah.
But, you know, having a group of Alicias and Shans leading the charge, and maybe, you know, I don't know, doing some lobbying and some policy work and stuff that sort of impacts the structural stuff in government would be a really nice legacy to leave. But do you know what? I'm just happy in a better place. You know, these community that we serve. If the legacy is that some of them are in a better place, then, you know, that's okay for me.
Yeah, and look, you to me are doing that. You're doing that daily, and the stories. You know, and this, I think, part of the reason why we've gone to the time we've gone to is like there are so many stories you could have told. There's so many stories you have told, and they all speak of that impact that you're making. So, if people want to get involved, whether they're corporations or individuals, what's the best way to do that? Because what I'll do is I'll put a couple of links in the final video podcast,
the show notes.
Show notes. I
mean, it really depends on what you're looking for and what you need support solving. But I think for the charity, we're looking for employers of entry-level talent who see the value in widening the net they cast in terms of their search and selection methods, and will welcome and include radical talent with our support. So that they have the same opportunities as their mainstream, non-disabled, non-black, non-whatever counterparts do. We run a sponsorship model, which means that organisations can bundle together a range of different services, from unconscious bias training to trauma-informed leadership training to corporate volunteering or team away days to merely sponsoring a radical and their journey to work. Recruitment solutions, you know, if that's sort of what you're looking for, Radical Recruiter, a really effective partner, and we'd love to get in contact with anyone who sort of fits that profile. And then I guess if you're looking for support to carve out recruitment diversity, ESG or social value strategies that include recruitment, supporting underrepresented talent or leveling the playing field for them, then we can help with that work, as well as early careers recruitment. So your graduate and your apprenticeship schemes, not screens. Stuff there. Got my tongue tied there. You know, audits, accessibility audits, so end-to-end recruitment processes, these capacity building training, recruitment training, these sorts of things. That's Be Radical. But I'm on LinkedIn. I'm very loud on LinkedIn.
I know. Great. I love it.
Please connect with me there, or people can email me at emma@radicalrecruit.co.uk. And I'll do my best. I'm a terrible administrator, but my wonderful PA, Suze, will field any inquiries and connect you with me so I can't miss them.
I will speak for Sue's brilliance. I think Christmas hamper is coming our way, because if not for her, this conversation didn't happen, because she has been a legend in.
I'm terrible. I'm so sorry. Okay,
No. It's
not out of disinterest. I love talking to you, mate.
I know, and you know, when we first kicked this idea, there was the will to do it, and just life does life. So no, but I'm more singing about Susie's brilliance, because
she is
at
wonderful.
all hours I will get a message from her. And I'm like, whoa, are you? And then it's like, what can we just? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Then she'll come back and be like, okay, and I'm like, come on.
Yeah.
So
So Sirius is like your over 50s radical. She's also queer. She's a big lesbian. That's what my mum would say. She's a big lesbian. They're partners. And she's got no experience as a PA, but she's been a parent and 2 kids and a wife as well. So run a family home, and she was in she did paramedicine for a while, and she's been a teacher's aide and all these amazing transferable skills. And she is exceptional as a result. She keeps the old anxiety levels down, which is amazing.
She knows the thing. I mean, she knows the thing about about herding cats, because honestly, she's I felt that radical approach because she gets the job done, and that's why we're here. And I'm glad. And I think there is one last thing, and I don't know if you'll have an answer to this one, but I just would love if there was a motto that you kind of wake up with, that you try and hold on to, because you've got so many pearls of wisdom, but I just wondered if you've got something like that you would share with us.
Do you know what? I'm thinking about getting this tattooed on me. It's incredibly cliche, but I don't care. This too shall pass, and not in the sense that the bad times. I mean, there's everything passes, right? And we use it. We use this expression or motto, whatever you call it, to help people, remind people that there's probably a light at the tunnel. But I often think we don't really think about this in terms of the good stuff that we've got in our reach, and appreciating that this too shall pass. So, you know, if you've got great friends or the best family or an amazing job or a safe home, you know, appreciate it, and take stock of what you got, I think, because this too shall pass at some point, you know. I think it's that for me really grounds me in reality, helps me get through the shitty times as a founder or a friend or a sister or whatever it is, but also makes you sort of really appreciate what you've got and what's really of value in the world. And what's a real blessing.
Yeah, I knew you'd have something for me there, because you do have so many nuggets. And I think when I hear that, what happens for me is I hear gratitude, and I hear being present and in the moment and taking care of today, because tomorrow may not come to pass, to be quite honest. And the minute someone said it to me the other day, that we're born to die, and I was like, what do you mean?
But we are.
And then
every day we're closer to death.
And I was like, oh my God, like I already have a rocket that's been fired, so I'm off, and I know you are. But when you look at it in those terms and you realize that everything has a beginning and an ending, and that could be friendships, that could be our life, that could be business, that could be just so many different things, it makes it more bearable to know that you're not necessarily permanently stuck if you're in a bad spot. And that where you start, like some of your radicals like Sean and Suze and so many others that you've talked about, Arbor that we talked about before, you know, where you start doesn't have to be where you end up. So I'm not going to get matching tattoos. I think I've got enough of those, but I might just write that in a post-it note on my computer.
I might go get it done today, and I'll just send you. That can be the cover of your wherever you upload it.
I would actually put it past you, because it would be something radical like that you would continue to do.
I just don't know where in body I want it, but that's a conversation for another episode, maybe.
I think so. But thank you so much. Do report back, and I can't wait to keep following your journey with interest and love and support. And I can't wait to get this out and for more people to know what they can do and how they might do it in their own ways to make a difference and make the world a better place. Save Emma, save the world. This is my thing.
Thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate you, mate. Thank you.
No worries. All the best. Speak soon.
Bye.
Bye.